Well, hello there. My name is Dr. James. Welcome to Love and Life Elevated. It's my lovely wife, Dr. Deborah.
Hello, welcome, and thank you again for supporting us on this journey together and for being here and giving us your feedback and your love and support. We're so glad that you're here.
You know, sweetheart, this is a great topic today because we've often talked about the power of something called circadian rhythms, which we're going to talk about today. But we're also going to layering in all these other pieces to the rhythm puzzle. So if you're feeling sometimes, like I think many of us, if not all of us, really pushed, finding yourself more stressed, finding yourself more reactive, more triggered, and you're wondering how you can find ways to naturally reset yourself. So not only showing up best for the people that you love, but most importantly, showing up for yourself in a way that's more compassionate, more peaceful, more present, and really helping you to navigate these very interesting times where so much around us is really pushing a lot of our buttons.
Definitely. It's so overwhelming, all the choices that we have, all the bombardment of notifications, stress here, responsibilities there.
The news.
Something that's really helped me is as much as possible, I turn off my notifications, my computer and my phone, because boom, when it comes in, oftentimes it's disrupting whatever my flow is at that time. And that is a whole another topic, but it's a little jarring to the nervous system and it disrupts my rhythm. And also when you're starting to talk about rhythm, I thought you were going to tell people they should start getting out their drums, because I immediately picture you drumming whenever you start talking about rhythm.
Oh my gosh.
That's a great visual for me.
I have no rhythm, and you have been incredibly compassionate about that. And here's the thing I want to kind of help us to lay down a foundation for. You are most likely familiar with something called circadian rhythms. That's the 24-hour clock. It has to do with light and dark, sunrise, sunset. And this is something that we are all connected to. Every single one of us, and frankly, every organism is connected to circadian rhythms. Plants, animals, all of us. And what's really interesting around that idea is that when we brought in technology, or I should say when the light bulb was invented, when electricity came in, that was the beginning of circadian rhythms going upside down. We went from sleeping on average somewhere around 12 and a half to 13 hours a night. Let that sink in, 12 and a half to 13 hours. And once the light bulb came in, we lost upwards of 35% of our traditional sleep patterns once light came in, or artificial light came in. And that is how many of us have been struggling with circadian rhythms ever since.
And you talk about this a lot in the book, and I think we've talked about that here. And I'm excited that we're also talking about ultradian rhythms,
yes,
which are also present in every organism under the sun, single-celled to your largest mammals. And what's cool about ultradian rhythms is they can last from minutes to hours throughout the day, but it also occurs within a day, and all organisms have several. So when you talk about sleep and how with the change in light access with the invention of the light bulb, our sleep has changed, but within the sleep cycle, we have an ultradian rhythm, and that's when we go through these cycles of REM and non-REM sleep.
Yes. That's
actually an ultradian rhythm. So that happens 3 or more times during the night. And when our ultradian rhythms are off, like that gets all, pushed out of place. And so what I love that you've talked about for quite a while now is how to really optimize all the rhythms, starting with what you can do in your day to optimize your ultradian rhythm, kind of going with the flow with your peak energy. And if you don't recognize your peak energy, how to get to those states by regulating your nervous system through these rituals that you'll share.
Yeah, I think that what you hit on, sweetheart, is so important, this whole idea of how personal this is. And I think that hopefully gives everyone an opportunity to look at today's show in a way that you get a chance to seek what is your sort of personal way in which these ultradian rhythms are showing up. Because once you get close to them and once you start to align with them, not only are you going to feel more energized and more in balance, you're going to find your nervous system regulates more effectively. You're going to find your immune system is stronger. You're going to find your mental and emotional stability is going to go up exponentially. And all this is connected just knowing where your rhythm is and then taking the heroic steps to honoring it once you do. And I think that's the harder work, right? Is Many of us don't have a lot of agency over how our days go, but that isn't really going to get in the way of what we're going to talk about today, because this is a simple noticing, regardless of how much you're working, how hard you're working, how much demands you have in your day. There are still ways to really get connected with your ultradian rhythm. And I'm going to lay down the first practice, which is first thing in the morning. Once you wake up, the first thing you do want to do is get outdoors immediately. Put your face in the sun. Allow yourself to have a soft gaze looking towards the sun. That is the ultimate way in which we begin setting the clock. And that is how we get our neurochemistry and our physiology to go, okay, this is the beginning of our rhythm. We establish it through the sunlight, not through an artificial light, and that lays a tempo that will carry us literally for the rest of the day.
So, devil's advocate, how do you do that when you wake up when it's still dark? You're excellent at as soon as it gets light out, you're out there, but you're waking up in the dark. We do have full spectrum bulbs in our gym because that's kind of where you head first.
Yep.
And what's so cool about what you do that I appreciate is you don't turn any lights on in the bedroom or bathroom when you're kind of getting ready to go downstairs, and you prepare the night before between your pre-workout drink, your outfit, your gym clothes and such. And so you kind of make your way through the dark down here. And then a thing we did in the last few years that was awesome in the gym is we have a very dim,
sort of a Zen light.
Like a Zen light. So it's not an overhead light at all. It's just enough so that you can see what you're doing down there. And do you turn that on versus the full spec overheads?
That's exactly what I do. And along with that, I don't put my face in the phone right out of the gate. And I think that's most important. So you're right. I do get up before the sun, and I try to start off with a very gentle beginning with a light. And then once the sun is up, Deb and I are both out there. We're on our walk, we've got the dogs, and we stop in the middle of a field where we're making our walk and literally put our face in the sun. So this is something every single one of you can do, I hope. And it's a practice that once you start to align with it, it's subtle. You're not going to go, oh my goodness, I did this one morning and I was like, wow, all the lights turned on. No, you're going to find it to be more subtle. But what you'll learn over time is that it really is nudging your chemistry to start to align with the natural ways in which light is helping us and supporting us, but also as a clue into when you're going to see over the next course of the 10, 12, 14 hours, when you're seeing little windows when maybe a little fatigue sets in or distraction sets in, or you just feel like you need to do things like move your body, get up. That is the beginning of understanding, and there's been all types of research out there around, sort of time blocks. And one of the latest one is somewhere around 47 minutes is kind of the ideal window where we can be working deep on something. Having your face in some creative work, some doing your daily work, 47 minutes and upwards of 13 to 17 minutes away from it, taking a walk, doing a stretch, getting outdoors. That is how we begin this idea of ultradian rhythms. But to your point, sweetheart, it really, really helps to have a level of presence to know when you're kind of feeling like, wow, I'm feeling super distracted or I'm feeling agitated. How do you begin to kind of notice that in your own life, honey? And what are some of the things that you're doing to help you kind of navigate when that happens?
I really want to address that question, but I have a confession first. So yesterday, in particular, intentionally, I was fully aware of I was not honoring that ultradian rhythm because I was in a project that I just really wanted to complete. So my day went longer. My focus on that project for longer lengths of time kept me, in front of the computer. And what happened then later, as you witnessed, is I think it was 6:15, and you look over at me on the couch and you're like, are you falling asleep? And I'm probably sitting there with my eyes closed because I was falling asleep. And it's because I wasn't honoring those energy cycles throughout the day. Also, I had 0 caffeine yesterday, and maybe that played into it. And I'm sure it was just that I really was so on task. I stepped away here and there, but not as much as normal. So back to your original question. Thank you for listening. I think that breath work is one of the most important things that you can do. I'm thinking of a 3-minute break, not even that 17-minute. But what I will do with that longer time is I love to make a cup of tea. So sipping a warm tea, warm water with lemon, and taking time just to pause, breathe. And as James said, if you have access to the outdoors, what I will do is I'll just go stand by a window and sip tea for a few minutes just to step away from what I've been doing. And I find that really helpful.
That is so good. And I was just feeling the permission I was getting when you said that. And I think for a lot of us, when we think about, well, you don't know my life and I don't have that kind of time. And it brings up a lot for people like, well, I can't imagine stepping away for 3 minutes or even 17. Here's a couple things to remember. Number one, you will not lose productivity. In fact, all the science tells us that if we are great with doing time blocks, 45 minutes, an hour, taking 10, 15 minutes away, you will literally outproduce yourself, the former self, when you do that. Upwards of 2.5 times. That is incredible. And on top of that, what's happening in your brain is you're getting a chance to really sort of recalibrate dopamine and serotonin. So your dopamine levels with motivation and focus, those are going to be restored and come back to life. These are things that are happening neurochemically. And on top of that, from a standpoint of what's happening physiologically, cortisol levels are getting a chance to dissipate, so your stress levels will kind of normalize. And then when you come back to life, cortisol sort of comes back in as as a supporter of energy. So you're getting a chance to really kind of replenish these stores of the things that make you feel motivated and confident and peaceful. And I love to say less reactive. And what you did yesterday, last night, I do remember that. I looked over and I was like, oh my goodness, she's going down and it's 6:30. And I was like, but you did, honey. You hammered away at a project and that was amazing because the project actually was for me doing a presentation. I'm not good at building PowerPoints. Deb can do everything, and she built this beautiful presentation for me. And you hammered for 10 hours yesterday. So these are the little things that we can do. And here's a little practice that I'd love for people to consider. When you are knowing that you're starting to kind of lose your rhythm, just step away even for a moment. A box breath is great. 4 seconds inhalation, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds release, and then a 4-second break. You do 3 of those. This is something the Navy SEALs are doing when they're feeling anxious, when they're feeling a life and death situation. They literally train Navy SEALs to do a box breath, which literally helps to normalize all the stress hormones, so we get really, really focused again, helps us to come back to center and really feel a sense of confidence. And I think that's a big part of these rhythms, is that we get into this place where we're just human doings. We're just knocking off our list. We're just building our list and getting things done. And we sort of grade ourselves. We sort of judge ourselves at the end of the day based on how many things we really get done. Well, when you take this trust walk and align with ultradian rhythms, not only are you going to see your work be better, you're going to see your mindset be stronger, you're going to see your physiology be stronger. What you're really going to see is when you're done with work, you're going to actually greet the evening with the people that you love. If you're with someone that you love, your family, you're just going to be a better version of yourself. You don't show up at dinner time just toast. You literally are recalibrated so you can really focus on, why are we all working so hard? So we can be with the people that we love in a beautiful, peaceful way, not stressed, not exhausted, not present. This is all the way in which we navigate every day, and our bodies are beautifully built to do this for us as long as we pay attention.
And piggybacking on your discussion about cortisol, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I was thinking it as you said it. And so cortisol, how it does fluctuate throughout the day. And if we're not taking the right steps to manage it so that it stays in its normal curve to support us throughout the day, we're going to manifest in brain fog, fuzzy thinking, fatigue. And what I like to do with my patients is, especially when they're sort of giving me symptoms that sound like their cortisol may be really off its rhythm, is you can measure that in the saliva is the best because you can do several samples throughout the day. So sometimes docs will order it in the blood, but that really doesn't tell us anything of what your cortisol is doing throughout the day. That's just like where it was when you had your blood drawn in that moment. So I would just recommend, if you're thinking that you may be having issues with cortisol interrupting the flow of your other hormones, of your thinking, of your energy, maybe see if you can do an adrenal stress index test that will look at samples throughout the day, a waking sample, 2 midday cycles, an evening sample cycle.
Sample and cycle.
And go from there, because to your point, honey, when cortisol levels are imbalanced, especially if they're too high or if they've just bottomed out, I am not my best self. And then I can't be my best self in relationship, on the job. I can think back of times when I was in an office situation where you just aren't the person you want to be when you react. And that weaved into early aspects of the relationship. Sure, it peeps up now and again, but I think this is a great time to kind of transition into this area of like relationship reset. When you are feeling that urge to just react, which is what happens under the influence of like disordered cortisol, is this reactivity versus reflectivity, like reaction versus reflection.
Yeah, gosh, I think this is something that's perfect transition. How many times have you been in your life where you were like going, well, this all sounds great. And one of the most powerful things it does, I think it encourages self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-compassion. As we start to kind of see our rhythm and go, oh my gosh, I'm so out of rhythm. I can't imagine having an ultradian rhythm connection. Well, this is the beginning when we actually give ourselves permission to have self-awareness, to go, yeah, gosh, I see the waves in my day. And if I could just ride these waves differently, there's my self-acceptance. And then I get a chance to actually look at the windows where I know I'd love to be a better partner, a better person. I'd rather be kinder and more loving and gentle with myself. This is how ultradian rhythms affect and impact our self-compassion. This is how it all works at a deep emotional and spiritual level, by honoring our physiology.
I think when I am tired, stressed, or triggered, which is a lot right now, how do I show up as a loving being in partnership with you, as a mother to our girls, as a friend, as a caregiver, as a doctor? How do I take that pause, whether it's a 12-minute stretching session, a 10-minute sipping tea, looking out the window? How do I pause to then become a better human in the process and come from a place of reflection versus reaction?
Gosh, well, that speaks directly to another practice that has been shown time and time again to help us with that sacred pause.
Yep.
That little moment that, sometimes we go, gosh, if I had just had a moment to really get present before I opened my mouth, before I reacted, before I was triggered. Well, meditation is as little as 6 minutes a day, but ideally somewhere between 8 and 12 minutes, but 6 minutes will do it. They say that 6 minutes a day will literally give you that neurochemical pause. It will help you to not react right away and help you to give you that moment where you're thinking, wait a second, do I really want to say that? Do I really want to make that person feel that? Because I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling angry, versus all of a sudden there's that one beat and it's like, who do I want to be right now? I love this person. How do I want to speak to this person? How do I want to remember what I did during that moment? This is all what's really possible for us. This is the ultimate locus of control. And I feel like this is something that many of us have given that away. And it's because life is moving fast and technology steals this idea from us. So this is about you choosing to take your time back, your awareness back, your relevance to what it is that you want your time to be doing and how you want to be connecting with it.
Yeah, I'm going to reread The Wise Heart by Jack Kornfield, because that's where I learned about the sacred pause. And just not until this discussion have I tied it into ultradian rhythm. And what if I made that pause between the work a sacred pause? And what it is you've heard the expression of, I put my foot in my mouth, right? Well, we can prevent that from happening by examining our intention first before we speak. Like, what is my intention behind what I want to see? Am I coming from compassion and concern or the need to be right? And earlier when I mentioned that this is something we've worked on in our relationship of over 30 years, I can think back to early times, back when we were living outside of Portland, great area, but we didn't have those, we weren't developed in relationship together with those tools. You had done a lot more work on that than I.
Because I was older.
You were older, very old.
So
very
much
wise, so much wiser. But
I was 29 and you were 24.
We never fought, but I can remember I would say both guilty, if I may, with this need to be right over whatever it was. It was never even usually anything earth-shattering. But wow, somewhere in the last 8-10 years, that really shifted. And we've talked about it shifting, like, oh, that feels so good to not have to be right or to surrender and acknowledge. And I think part of it is because we have been practicing this idea of ultradian rhythm, pausing before we speak, asking ourselves, how do we want this to land? What's the intention behind what I want to say? Because you know when you're saying something hurtful to someone. You know when you want it to zing just a little bit.
You do.
And versus, I'm sure you've also had a silent conversation in your head. How can I say this without hurting so-and-so's feelings? And it's a very deep conversation we can have with it. But the take home here is think about the sacred pause between, am I saying that right? You know when a word doesn't sound right? The sacred pause between the work all throughout the day. Like we can't just be work without pausing to take the breath and the stillness and then think about what is my intention in this next 47, 60 minutes of my day.
Yeah, and this is something where I think when people look at relationships early on, so much of the romance and the sparks around falling in love, and that is such a dopamine rush. And there's just, oh my goodness, it's we're all, when you've had that experience, you know what that's like. And then when that dissipates, which is only natural, we have to move from falling in love to standing for love. And standing for love is the work of our life. How do we stand for love? We take the sacred pause. We do the meditation. We step outside in the morning. All of these practices are standing for love, not necessarily for a person, for yourself. So you're standing for love. And one of the things that I've done time and time again, you're probably tired of me saying this one. Every doorway, if you have a practice, before you walk through the doorway, say to yourself, what would love do now? There's a sacred pause. Before you open the door, going to see your children, going to the office space, going to the grocery store, you're crossing over a threshold. Simply utter to your breath, under your breath, say, what would love do now? There's your sacred pause. And then you walk into that space and do your best to live the answer, what love does now. It's that kind of bringing me back, making me feel connected to what I want to be. And then when most beautiful things happen, self-efficacy has been shown to be one of the most powerful things we can do for self-esteem and self-confidence and just to feel good about ourselves. And self-efficacy is simple. I want to follow through on my good intentions to be a good human being. It is such a beautiful sort of proclamation. I want to follow through on my good intentions. I want to see myself be the person I know I can be. That is medicine for your mind and your body and your soul.
And when I was working on your presentation yesterday, you are talking about emotional and spiritual contagion. And so I was feeling that when you walk through those doorways, what would love do now? How do I want to be? You know, maybe it's a gratitude practice every time you walk through the door, but how you become contagious. It works the same way as the immune system, right? You walk outside of the house. If you're all germy and you go to the store, you're contagious. If you walk out of your home under the influence of peace, gratitude, self-efficacy, you're spreading that. Like with our mirror neurons. And maybe we save that for another talk where you can really do a deeper dive into that idea of emotional and spiritual contagion. But because I was working on that yesterday, I was thinking that's what it reminded me of when you were just talking about the doorway practice.
That's a great intention for another talk. So I hope this fills you with hope. I hope this fills you with some possibilities. I hope this makes you feel like, wow, I got the circadian thing, but this ultradian thing is really, really interesting. This is how I don't fall completely off the wagon. This is how I keep myself with those bright lines, the Bushido, that code of conduct. Here it is, right there in this beautiful place. I have these guardrails. It's the way I want to show up in the world. Ultradian rhythms are a beautiful way that we get a chance to honor the self that we want to be. And sweetheart, you did such an awesome job of bringing back this idea for me, looking at our relationship and making me just feel proud. And that's not an ego statement. I feel proud of the way that you and I have gone through some really hard times when falling in love kind of left us in a place, ooh, now what do we do?
Right.
And we did the work. You did the work. I'm so grateful you did the work. And I'm grateful that you gave me permission and encouragement to do the work right alongside of you. Because ultimately, we are all here to do the work for one another, whether it's an intimate relationship or just trying to be a better world citizen right now. And man, I could go on for hours about how we all need to just choose to be better world citizens right now. It's not a political statement. That is a statement of life and fact right now. So,
and it is a choice. You don't just wake up and all of a sudden, oh, my ultradian rhythm is working today. Like, that is not it. You need to set the intention. You need to write it down the night before and keep practicing it until it really does become a natural part of your rhythm. And I think that's what you're saying, is that we have put this in day after day, this work, this sacred pause, the putting our face in the sun, the moving our body first thing, honoring each other's space, and taking a pause before we say something, especially when it is hard to talk about. You don't just say it. Think about how it's going to impact your friend, your partner, your coworker, your boss, and you'll see your life change before you.
Yeah. What a beautiful thing. So we just want to say thanks again for joining us, and thank you for letting us have these types of intimate conversations right alongside of you. These are the conversations I want to have more of because it reminds me of the person I want to continue to be. Honey, thank you for doing the work.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a great big love in my life and helping me one of my greatest teachers, if not my greatest teacher. And I just think the world of you.
I think the world of you, and your leadership and your huge heart is so needed in the world. And I love you and I appreciate you.
Thank you, sweetie. So we love you, and we hope you have a beautiful day and a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. All the love, all the blessings. Take good care.
Bye.